Hey, what's up YouTube? This is the Mermail Master coming at you from the Team Time Riders Yugi tube channel with a deck profile on my updated DDDs. Now, as you guys remember, the structured deck just released. I posted the anime version of this deck to the channel a couple of days ago, but now I wanted to bring you the competitive version that I've been focusing on. This competitive version of the DDD deck has a lot of the main competitive cards, but without the budget-breaking Pot of Desires or the budget-breaking, Dimension Barrier. So anyway, yeah, this deck is going to be just a, run by of a budget build of the DDDs that also remains itself extremely competitive and able to compete. The one thing that I will mention that DDDs are extremely combo based, and a lot of it relies on looping singular cards in order to get more benefits from your plays. It's an extremely fun deck that focuses on fusion, XYZ, synchro, and pendulum, and is extremely potent in the meta. So I'm going to get into the deck profile. I'll explain my choices along the way. If you have any comments, please remember to leave them in the comment section below. And without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to start off first with this DDD deck is 3 copies of DD7 Kepler. Kepler is your main searcher of the deck, and that level 1 is simultaneously a boon and sort of a detractor. As a pendulum monster, you're not really going to use him for his pendulum's effect, even though he is a scale 10. The most competitive DDD decks will never pendulum summon, and this one is no exception. When Kepler comes to the field, you can search one Dark Contract card from your deck to your hand. Either that, or you can target one DD card on the field and return it to your hand. So very, very good card. Usually this is a card that takes up your normal summon, grabs you any contract from your deck to your hand. Next, we have 3 copies of DD Swirl Slime. Swirl Slime is your main combo play in the deck and is excellent at what it does. It has 2 separate effects. Its first effect states that basically what you can do is you can take this card plus one other DD or DDD monster in your hand and discard them to the graveyard, and it basically acts like its own polymerization. So it is both one of the monster materials and polymerization. And then to add to this, you can banish this card from your graveyard to special summon any DD monster from your hand. This includes anything from like levels 1 to 8 or other things. So you can get Swirl Slime to the graveyard with its own effect and then banish it to extend your plays even further. Easily special summonable ability of Swirl Slime and easy to get it to the graveyard create a very, very good scenario where this card can be utilized to its maximum potential. Next is 3 copies of DD Necro Slime. This is sort of like a competitive version of the DDDs, and a lot of people have bumped Necro Slime up from 1 to 3. And now I'm starting to kind of see why they're trying to do that. Necro Slime in and of itself is a very, it's not a card that like lights up combos by itself. But then again, neither is any of the DD cards. The deck functions a lot like both Mermails and Sylvans, which require a lot of combos, big boards, and big pushes. And none of the cards are really like useful on their own, but sort of everything in the deck functions around, using the cards and building them off of each other to build boards. So DD Necro Slime doesn't really directly contribute to many of the combos in the deck, but it just helps you extend even further. So banishing a Necro Slime from your graveyard allows you to activate its Miracle Fusion effect. You can send it and a Swirl Slime to the graveyard to basically get out a fusion monster. And then if you have nothing else to summon with the Swirl Slime, you can banish the Necro Slime and any other DD to Miracle Fusion from graveyard. So a lot of ways to get that to the graveyard as well, and thus it's a very useful card. Next card is the main reason why we're running this deck in the first place, and that is the 3 copies of DD Lamia. Lamia is, alongside Night Howling, one of the only 2 main tuner monsters that you run in this deck. Now, Lamia is your big combo maker, and a lot of the combos in this deck revolve around cycling and special summoning Lamia as much as possible. Most of the combos rely on using Lamia in conjunction with Genghis, special summoning Lamia through any other DD monster's effects, and then summon Genghis to the field, special summon Alexander, and then get Lamia back again to special summon Crystal Wing. using Alexander as the material. But the way that Lamia works, though, is that it's a very, very easy card to summon out with, like, Genghis, with a set scale of Oblivion King, Abyss Ragnarok. Several different ways there are to get Lamia onto the field, and then Lamia also has its own effect as well, which you want to not use for a little while, where you can basically target any DD or Dark Contract card on your field or in your hand, and that of course includes like maybe a dead Necroslime or something. Send that card to the graveyard and it's special summon Lamia, but it's banished when it leaves the field. So Lamia is a big playmaker, not only for that, but for also synchro plays as well. One big thing that I do want to note for players who are picking up this deck is that you cannot send Kepler to the graveyard for Lamia's effect unless Kepler is in your hand. Kepler on the field cannot be sent because if sent from the field, it would go to the extra deck instead. So that's Lamia, extends a lot of the plays and truly makes DDD into the competitive powerhouse it is currently, of course, before the other cards drop. Now, the next card we have is 3 copies of DDD Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok, and I arguably think that this is probably the best card in the deck. If not the best card, it is the most versatile. It's a level 8 for XYZs, and it has a ton of awesome effects. So if you set this card in the Pendulum scale, you can basically activate this card whenever you special summon a DD monster. You can activate this and special summon any DD monster from your graveyard, except your opponent takes half life point damage that turn, and then you take 1,000 damage. But it just extends your special summon plays earlier. You know, if you fusion summon like a Genghis or synchro summon an Alexander, trigger this special summons something, which will then trigger the Genghis and Alexander, which will special summon something else to further extend your plays. So the half damage is not really that big of a payoff to make to summon something out that will further advance your game state. However, the real reason to summon Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok lies in his monster effect. When this guy is special summoned to the field, he can reborn any DDD from your graveyard. And keep in mind, this is only DDDs he can reborn. But, you know, Genghis, Alexander, Siegfried, Beowulf, whatever DDDs you summon, Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok can pull it out of the graveyard. This is great if you have like Beowulf in your graveyard. You can immediately go for a rank 8, and like other things as well. The other effect that this guy has is that you can then target one card on the field. You can tribute a DD card and target like one card on the field and banish it. So if you, a lot of the times if you have like an errant Necroslime on the graveyard that you've just special summoned with a Genghis that you weren't going to get anyway, you don't have any way to get it to the graveyard, you can activate Abyss Ragnarok's effect, banish that card from the graveyard, or target that card and then further banish it. But yeah, extremely, extremely good. So it has very, very good utility and versatility, not only in the Pendulum zone, but in the Monster zone as well. So you want to see this card ideally as soon as possible, because there's a lot of ways to fetch this out, and everything about it is good. The next cards, and I have 2 proxies in here, is going to be 3 copies of DD Savant Thomas. I only have the 1 copy of Thomas right now, but I wanted to get the deck profile out to you guys as soon as I possibly could. So I am looking for 2 more Thomas to put into the deck, but I wasn't really a big fan of Thomas until I started running it in, you know, the strategy. Basically, Thomas has 2 separate effects. In your Pendulum zone, you can actually activate this to add one, I think it's once per turn, add 1 DD Pendulum monster from your extra deck back to your hand. So if you popped a Pendulum monster, or you're having like another play or something like that, basically what you can do is you can add back that, or add back like a Kepler from your extra deck to your hand. That is like a +1 play and allows you to further get use out of Thomas. The real reason that he's run, though, is he is a level 8, and for his on-field monster effect, if you send him to the graveyard and then special summon him out with a play, Thomas allows you to target a monster in your Pendulum zone. So let's say you have like Abyss Ragnarok in your Pendulum zone, target that, pop the Abyss Ragnarok, and then you can special summon another card. Usually you'd special summon another Abyss Ragnarok, Abyss Ragnarok's effect. So it allows you to special summon a level 8 DDD, special summon with Abyss Ragnarok, you know, just another random DDD card in your graveyard. Say it's like a Genghis or like a, you know, whatever. and then you can then use Thomas and the Abyss Ragnarok to overlay for Hope Harbinger if you're going first, or for Kali Yuga if you want to clear back row while going in for an OTK. So this is basically just like when you get it to the field, if you have that plus Abyss Ragnarok in the pendulum zone, that's like, it's an extremely good play. I think Abyss Ragnarok Thomas plus like a Swirl Slime is very, very useful. Not to mention Thomas, another thing about it is it also has the effect that when it activates that effect to special summon Abyss Ragnarok, your opponent also takes half damage. So ideally you want to trigger Abyss Ragnarok, somehow special summon the Thomas from the graveyard, so then you take the 1000 damage and your opponent takes half. Then Thomas will activate its effect to send Abyss Ragnarok to the graveyard to special summon another one from your deck. And since this effect is also halved, it stacks, and you get more effects off for basically just the same cost of your opponent just taking half damage for the turn, which in the grand scheme of things is not too big. Now, moving on to the next card, is 3 copies of DD Savant Copernicus. Now, I'm a little bit iffy on this card, mostly because it takes up the normal summon. You're never really going to use its Pendulum effect, which allows you to negate spells during the battle phase. However, its monster effect is basically it's a searchable Foolish Burial for DDDs, so you send a Necro Slime, a Swirl Slime, a Lamia, or any of the level 8 DDDs you need, maybe like a Thomas or something like that, to easily fetch it out of the graveyard or to push other plays further. But the thing is that DD7 Copernicus has it's one of the only level 4s in the deck, so it doesn't really have a level that fits with everything else, unfortunately, and it also suffers from the ability to be normal summoned. Not often do you really want to waste your Swirl Slime special summon on Copernicus when you could use it on something else, so it definitely vies and fights with Kepler for that normal summon spot. There are some times that you are able to use DD7 Copernicus to that extent and place certain things in your graveyard, but overall it's operating kind of like in a vacuum of better options to run, I feel like. And that if a better option does emerge in the future, something that has an effect similar to Copernicus yet doesn't really doesn't really have like its own inherent special summon ability or can easily be gotten out of hand, then that card will probably be run in place of Copernicus. But Copernicus, I feel, is just a placeholder for now. It does offer some benefits, but every time that I see Copernicus in my hand, I usually want to see something else. So there's 3 of those. The card that we're running finally is 1 copy of DD Orthros. Orthros sort of suffers from a similar problem as well. It's a tuner, but you don't really use it for that kind of effect, and you don't really search it for that. It can special summon itself like during your standby phase and negate the damage that your contract cards would deal you. But DD Orthros is used for his pendulum effect. You can just place him in the pendulum zone, and then you pop a DD Dark Contract card, and then you can pop a spell or trap your opponent controls. So pretty good for a spot back row removal, and then also good as a needed tuner in case you need it. I've never run into a situation really where Orthros represents a combo piece, but I think he's a nice tech card to put in there just to play around it. And then finally, for the monsters, we have 2 Maxi. Safe to say, Maxi, I hate going against it in this deck. DDDs like Mermails are a very, very fragile deck in terms of not really necessarily the negation of the board that they can make, but the process in which they take building that board. It's not a deck that can just stop at one thing. You're comboing off a lot, you're special summoning a lot. So if you're going to take the Maxi challenge, which you often have to do, on pain of leaving like a level 1 monster or a couple level 1 monsters on the field that your opponent can easily run over, on pain of having to continue off your combos under Maxi, your opponent's going to draw a lot, and they're probably going to draw an out on your board, or they're going to draw enough, or you just stop your plays right there and have just like a Kepler on the field, or like a Copernicus, or some like a Genghis, or something very, very small that's not able to accurately deal with the established board your opponent's probably going to throw at you next turn. So in a vacuum, without any way to really negate Maxi, it is the worst possible card to run up against in this deck, 100%. But you do have to run this card because in the DDD mirror match and in other matches, having the maxi to discard from your hand is tantamount. That's it for the monsters. I believe it's like 23 or 24 monsters or so. And moving on to the spells and traps. To start out, we have Dark Contract with the Gate. This is pretty self-explanatory. Once per turn, search a deity from your deck to your hand. And basically what you can do with this is you basically search your whole deck, pretty much everything. And yeah, so this can kind of loop with Kepler in the same way as Cyber Dragon and the other stuff. But yeah, DD7, the Dark Contract with the Gate is pretty self-explanatory. Next card is 2 copies of Dark Contract with the Swamp King. Now, a lot of people have elected to run just 1 copy of this, but I decided to push the copies up to 2. I had it at 3 before. I feel that it's a very, very useful card to have in the deck, and it's especially able to be seen, more recently rather than later. The reason for that is it not only can allow you to fuse from the field in your hand, but also from your graveyard as well. And if you want to pop this for like a Lamia on one of your turns and then continue off plays, having that extra 1 there is sort of like a insurance in case something goes wrong. Now we have 3 Allure of Darkness. If I had the ability to, I would probably run Desires in place of Allure of Darkness, because the one thing that I hate is banishing necessary combo pieces. And pretty much everything in this deck you need as a combo piece. Like, even if it's just a random DDD sitting in your hand, like the dark monsters that you have and the combo plays you can do, none of that stuff can be accomplished on its own. So it's not like, throwing this in a zombie OTK deck. You really, really have to think about what you're discarding and how you're going to construct your combos. And I feel like this as opposed to Desires Desires is far and away the better option. And as you guys know, if you've seen my previous video, I am not a big fan of Desires. I don't really like Desires, but I acknowledge that specifically in this deck where there's a lot of 3-ofs and there isn't really anything that's hit, Desires, having a +2, it has less of an opportunity to banish something you need and much more of an opportunity to be able to provide some tangible benefit to you in the form of that +1. And, there's a lot of times that I have Allure of Darkness where I wish I had Pot of Desires instead. And, it's definitely a card that I don't really feel too strongly about in terms of its ability to, affect the DDD deck. But at the same time, it's the best draw option outside of Desires, I believe, and it's the most easy to get off. Not only that, it's not once per turn as well, so you can dig through your deck much, much faster. Next is 2 Trade-In. This is slightly better than Allure because this will send the level 8 monster you have to the graveyard. So if you have a Thomas or Abyss King Ragnarok, you can easily send those cards to the graveyard to draw 2 more cards. And it's just an easier play in general. Next is 1 for 1. Fetch those Keplers, fetch those Lamias, fetch those Necro Slimes, fetch whatever, pretty much anything that you want from your deck. And it also special summons it so it doesn't take up the normal summon and allows you to get whatever you need into the graveyard to activate further effects. So literally 1 for 1 is very, very useful in DDDs. And then finally for the spells is 1 copy of Foolish Burial. If you heard me talk about Copernicus, you pretty much know why this is in here as well. It's just a spell version that doesn't require the normal summon. So that is it for the spells. Moving on to the traps. 1 copy of Vanity's Emptiness. Set up a full board and flip this, your opponent loses. 1 copy of Dark Contract with the Witch. I really, really like this card. Its ability to trigger and just get rid of a problem card your opponent controls is very, very good. It's disruptive. It can load your graveyard up with what you need. It's basically like Raigeki Break for DDDs, and it's searchable by Kepler as well. And then finally, the 2 cards we have left are 1 copy of Warning and 1 copy of Strike. You don't necessarily need to run Strike. Some people run Strike at more than 1. But, you know, having warning and maybe like a couple of bottomlesses or like a floodgate or something like that will also suffice specifically for budget DDD players. The Solemn Strike and Solemn Warning are both in here just basically to stop your opponent's monster effects. One of the biggest things that happens is if your opponent sphere modes you or kaijus you like Clear Wing or something like that, you still need to be able to respond. Monster effects are much more potent in the game than spell and trap card effects, and Clear Wing and Siegfried, as well as like other things, will not, like, you clear the Clear Wing, you clear the Crystal Wing off of the field, and Siegfried and Hope Harbinger really have no way to deal with monster effects. So having Warning and having Strike as sort of their backup plan is a very, very good way to prevent monster effects from going off. So that's it for the deck. It's 40 cards. And moving on to the extra deck, as I've probably mentioned in previous videos, Timaeus the God Monarch is currently borrowing my Crystal Wing in exchange for the Totally Awesome, which you saw in my Mermail deck profile. So I'm going to be doing this deck profile without Crystal Wing right now, since, you know, some players can't really afford the card, and some players, you know, just really don't want to purchase it. So I'm going to go through a deck profile with discussions of all of the different monsters based on sort of the groups they're in. So to start out first, we have 2 copies of Flame King Genghis. Now, a lot of people have elected to start running 3, but I think 2 is perfect, considering that, you know, when you're trying to build the OTK, the third really, you know, will not come up as often as the second one will. But when electing to build your OTK, Genghis is a key thing. Unlike Alexander, Genghis has the ability, he's a level 6, he has the ability to special summon any DD monster, including DDDs, when you special summon a DD monster. So you use him, special summon something else, and then get Lamia from the graveyard to synchro into Alexander. He's the starting point for all your plays and is a very, very important card that you have to consider being able to use. So you're never, it's basically like when you have Genghis on the field, you start with Genghis and special summon, and then he's in the grave to then be reborn by any other card that you have that can reborn DDDs or banish for like any other effect. So usefulness is like, once you get him out, he's extremely useful to all of your combos and is a good DDD name for your graveyard. Next is 1 copy of DDD King Oracle D'Arc. It actually took me a long time to put this down to 1, but now I feel like I know why a lot of players have done this. Players run like 1 to 2 of these, and you don't really use its effect to stay on the field anymore for its ability as a beat stick, but more so to help you ramp up into something like Siegfried, which has a little bit more staying power. A lot of the times, if you're trying to OTK, you're not really going to use or care about the damage that your contracts inflict you. It's only in prolonged games where you actually have to worry about the effect of something like D'Arc, but D'Arc is just a very good card in this deck for ramping, not necessarily for its own ability. 1 copy of Beowulf, pretty much the same thing as that. Beowulf is a guy that you go into with extra DDDs, and the main reason why people run him is not necessarily for his effect, though his effect is very good. He's a level 8 monster. He can be summoned with Necro Slime and any DDD in graveyard. As you remember, I talked about Genghis being that DDD name. You have Necro Slime in the graveyard and Genghis in the graveyard as well. You can banish both of them, summon Beowulf. Beowulf is a level 8 that can overlay. And also his effect basically allows him to pop all spells and traps during the standby phase, kind of like a Heavy Storm, including your own, of course. And then also gives all your DDD monsters piercing. So even if he's still on the field and you're trying to go for game against your opponent's defense position monsters, Beowulf is a great card to have. So very, very useful, not necessarily to get out as like a final boss monster, but more so for just the sheer utility that a level 8 fusion monster, a level 8 DDD fusion monster has in this deck. And then the final fusion we're running is 1 copy of DDD Wave Oblivion King Caesar Ragnarok. This, I think, is probably my favorite of all of the fusions, mostly because, you know, when I first saw this card, I was like, wow, you know, this requires 2 DDDs. But as a testament to the way that Konami has designed this archetype, it's so easy to get this card out. You just banish 2 DDs from your graveyard with the fusion card, or, you know, send 2 of them from the field to the graveyard with, you know, something else. you can easily summon this card. And its effect is nothing to scoff at either, because when you attack your opponent, you can steal one of their monsters, non-targeting, equip it to that monster, and then this card gains the combined attack of every monster that's equipped. So that's right, it's not like one single monster can equip to this guy. So if this guy's like on the field on like the next turn and your opponent's got more than one monster, you can keep attacking and keep equipping monsters and keep like boosting this guy's attack up. He's already 3,200, so he's a massive beat stick on his own, but that just like throws the damage into astronomical levels. So that is DDD Wave King Oblivion Caesar Ragnarok. Now moving on to the Synchro monsters. I have a kind of eclectic Synchro lineup here, which I will discuss about. The first card that I want to start off with is DDD Alexander. This is another one of those ramp cards that I was talking about, besides Genghis and like the other level 7s in the deck. When you have Alexander, the main difference between him and Genghis is he doesn't have the ability to fetch a contract when he dies, and he'll also only special summon a monster that's level 4 or lower when a DD is special summoned. So other than that, he's pretty much the same effect, but the real reason that you run him is because he is a level 7 Synchro monster, and him plus Lamia equals Crystal Wing. Then we have one copy of Siegfried. When I first saw Siegfried in the anime, I was just like, this isn't really a good card. But once they clarified his effect in the actual game, and they said, oh yeah, not only can he negate continuous spells and trap cards that your opponent has, but he can also negate your own spells and traps, and any spell or trap card that your opponent would activate. No Raigeki, no Torrential Tribute, nothing that can stop you. Pretty much like, besides a counter trap, this guy has the ability to negate it, and it's a quick effect on your opponent's turn. Not to mention also, when he dies, you can gain 1,000 life points for every single Dark Contract card you control. So as if to add insult to injury, Siegfried has that ability. One thing I also want to mention is that Siegfried, being a DDD, can easily be reborn from your graveyard by any of the, can be reborn by Genghis or Abyss Ragnarok or any of those cards. And it's just so, broken sometimes if your opponent's, on the edge. They top deck, whatever they need, and it's enough to be able to get, that one Siegfried that you spend so much time getting off to the field, effortlessly back out there. One copy of Formula Synchron, just used for its draw effect and to draw further into, whatever else you want. You usually synchro him with a Lamia and a Kepler to boost up their levels and, just basically see if you can, draw into another combo piece. But it's very useful for, if you special summon a Necro Slime or something, you can get that card off the graveyard, and it's a tuner, so it can synchro during your opponent's turn, though I haven't seen myself using that effect. Hyper Librarian, literally only in here for the awkward times when you have Lamia and the Copernicus on the field. You can synchro into Hyper Librarian, and any synchros after that are made, you draw a card. Bonus points for synchroing with Formula Synchron. Do that little synchro play, draw 2. Then we have one copy of Trishula. Pretty self-explanatory. Any level 7 plus a Necro Slime / the other card, the Kepler, and then the Lamia equals Trishula. And there's a lot of ways to bring Trishula out, and just a very good card in general. Then the 3 cards that I have in this deck that, maybe you may be thinking okay, what is he trying to do here? And that is Clearwing, Stardust Dragon, and Vermilion Mech. I'll explain each of these in sort of detail. So Clearwing's in here basically as a replacement for Crystal Wing for players who are more budget conscious. Of course, you don't have to get the Ghost Rare version. You can get whatever version you want. But Clearwing is just a very, very potent card and very easy to summon in this deck, as level 7 synchros are. You use him with Genghis, and he has 2 negations instead of 1, so not quite the level 8, but still good. Stardust basically negates things that would destroy your cards, and destruction is kind of becoming more popular again, so this could be a good option to run in place of Crystal Wing. And then the last one I'm currently trying to test out here is Vermilion Dragon Mech, mostly because it fixes sort of a lot of problems if you have an errant Lamia on the field and you also have like a level 8 like Thomas or Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok. Synchro into this guy, your Lamia will be banished, and then when this guy is destroyed in any way, shape, or form, you can fetch that banished Lamia back to your deck. So, there's not a lot of banish recursion in this deck, and not many people choose to run the spell card. So this is a much easier card to be able to run in place of that spell. The spell I'm talking about, of course, is Pot of Avidity, or Acquisitiveness as it's called. Now, moving on to the XYZs. Start first with the easy one, Wave King Kaiser or Caesar. I almost never make this card. Probably should take him out of the extra deck, but in the off chance that you have 2 Copernicuses on the field, you can go into Wave King Caesar, and he's just kind of recursion for all your DDs if they get destroyed in any way, shape, or form. You pay 1,000 for each, and they come back. And then we have 1 copy of Beatrice. Make her with 2 of the DD Flame King Genghises, which are the only level 6s in the deck. And then there's a lot of combos and stuff that revolve around her as well, which, if you guys want, I can do a video based on those. And then finally, your 2 last monsters is 1 Hope Harbinger Dragon and 1 Duo Dawn King Kali Yuga. Both of these cards are really good because they operate on different spectrums. With DDDs being a combo deck, you want to look for as many different plays as possible. So going first, setting up the Harbinger Dragon is the best option because it will protect against spells and is a very defensive XYZ monster. Versus going second, you want to set up Duo Dawn King Kali Yuga to pop your opponent's spells and traps and create, no problems for you to further push for an OTK. So both of them solve different problems in the deck and are very, very good cards to consider running. And each of them is at 1 because you really only need 1 of each. So yeah, pretty much that's it. That is the deck profile of my competitive version of my DDDs. I really enjoyed doing the deck profile, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. If you did, please remember to give a like, comment, and subscribe to the Team Time Riders YouTube channel. We really appreciate the support. This has been the Mermail Master with the Team Time Riders YouTube channel, and I will be signing out. Catch you guys next time. Peace.